annual budget to help boost teacher salaries for our overlooked educators, despite the fact that the state chose to take over 100% of school operating funds as part of the property tax caps that we talk about every year. We talk about this as part of one of the contributing factors in educational funding that has impacted our schools. And that took place in 2008. One of the amendments that we offered in the budget would have fixed that. The Senate Democratic Caucus offered amendment number 67, which proposed a school funding formula that would give additional money to schools on top of what the House put in. So I believe we offered an additional $300 million on top of the $300 million that the House offered in their budget. In addition, we reallocated the funding so it matches the ADM, or student population, of each school type. So for example, traditional public schools educate 93% of Indiana's children, so 93% of our funding is in the formula goes to those schools. We were able to reallocate the money that the House used to fund ESAs and increase virtual charter schools and choice scholarships to fund all schools more fairly, more equitably. So here's what the breakdown looks like in our education funding formula proposal. It increases the funding for education increases funding for special education category by 10% each year for 22 and 23. Removes the House complexity floor and complexity ceiling in order to better serve low-income students. Sets virtual ADM funding to 85% of the foundation grant amount starting at fiscal year 22. Excludes any choice expansion. This is something that we looked at very closely in our caucus, and we wanted to articulate in our budget. And excludes the creation of the ESA program. It keeps the CTE categorical funding fiscal year 2021 and sets the foundation grant amount to match the House passed budget. To address the fact that since 2014, funding to help lower income students have been cut by 40%, our formula increases the complexity grant amount so that the appropriation grows year over year by 3%. Under our formula, every school deserves better and gets better through our funding formula, and kept the foundation grant at the House level, but increased the funding for complexity and special education grants. The only schools, and I repeat, the only schools that did not come out better on this end was out of the House formula are the voucher and virtual schools. We did not expand any of those programs as the House budget did. Outside of the formula, we increased the funding for the charter and innovation school grants from $750 to $850 fiscal year 22 and $1,000 in 23 versus the House increase of $1,250 overall. Our formula is posted on our website, the Indiana Senate Democrats. We want the media to have access to that. We also want constituents to see our version of it. We know we have a couple of more weeks left of session. We'll be working very closely with the chairman and other members, Senator Bassler as well. Despite the glaring issues with the House school funding formula, including disproportionate allocation of funds among traditional public education schools, our efforts to amend the budget to include a more equitable, adequate, and fair funding formula was voted down, as you all know. We will continue to work and we'll continue to fight for a fund formula. And this is what we heard in the committee, in the hearing, a more fair and equitable, equal and equity and school funding formula. So now we're going to transition. I'm going to ask Senator Karen Tallian if she can come forth and talk about some of the other amendments and issues that we foresee we've seen in this year's budget. So Senator Tallian.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Melton. A couple of things that I want to talk about. You know, the K through 12 funding is about half of our budget. But before I talk about the rest of the appropriations, I just want to remind everyone that there's the revenue side of this budget that we have yet to finalize. The revenue forecast comes out next week. Hopefully, Indiana will be in better shape fiscally than we believed when we last did the forecast in December. And what we hope this means is that we can restore $200 million worth of cuts that took place. Most of the agencies, not all, but most, had cuts of 15%. What we would really like to do is to be able to restore that, and hopefully we'll see some good news on that next week. So a couple of the other things that I wanted to talk about in the budget have to do with revenue as well. The House put in a 50-cent cigarette tax. The Senate took out the cigarette tax. The Senate Democrats are proposing that we put in $1 of cigarette tax. This is a tax that so many groups and agencies have requested. We are giving up this revenue, and I know it's not a permanent source of revenue, but it also is supposed to help and target people to quit smoking. We're also giving up revenue, and I made this clear in an amendment that I offered this morning, because we are still enacting Governor Mike Pence's tax cuts. Yes, we are still in the process of phasing in corporate and FIT tax cuts. And if we just stopped that for the last little bit, that's 40-some million dollars a year that we're not bringing in, to our revenue stream. The other thing that I want to talk about is what seems to be a policy that they're doing to pay off loans and to cash fund projects and to not allow any of the universities to do any of their capital projects. This is something that, frankly, I really don't understand why they're taking that tact right now. Money is cheap. If we allowed some of the universities to do bonds and bond some of their projects, we are paying off at cheap dollars, cheap interest rates, and yet they've allowed no university capital projects. I can't agree with that whole policy, and cash funding projects right now just, cash funding other projects just seems like the wrong thing to do. We also have a couple of other things that we're concerned about in the budget. The direct service providers and the people who do in-home care, the choice program has been cut. It has never been more important. We've never seen more important how that choice program allowed people to stay home in their houses for rehab, for whatever they needed, instead of going to nursing homes during this past year of COVID. So restoring that money, I think, is really important. They took a bigger than 15% cut. We should put all of that money back right now. The direct service providers are the people who actually do all of these home-based services. We set their salary rate. Because this is a Medicaid waiver program, the state of Indiana sets their salary. They are currently at around $11, $11.30 or something an hour. I understand that you can get a job delivering pizzas that pays $15 an hour. So if we want to keep professionals out there working and be able to staff these programs, we have to pay them real money. And our amendments look to move them up to a level of $15 an hour over the next 2 years. There are several other things that we had in the amendment. Once again, the Senate Democrats offered a method of paying for a sustained teacher pay increase by reallocating, re-amortizing some of the money from the pre-96 that we use every year to pay down the pre-96 loan. We had a program that came from the House, actually, that would fund teacher pay and give schools an additional amount of money per student if they would raise their base pay for teachers to $40,000 a year. So there are a number of places where the Senate Democrat budget does proposals do not agree with what the Senate Republicans have put forward. A lot of time has gone into this by everybody. And so we have a few things to work out over the next 2 weeks. Thank you. And we'll take questions.
Hey, this is Brandon Smith from Indiana Public Broadcasting. This is a question for either Senator Tallian or Senator Melton or both. The Senate Republican budget begins to spend some of the new $3 billion Indiana is getting in federal COVID relief dollars from the American Rescue Plan on a variety of programs, water infrastructure, mental health, regional economic development, et cetera, police body cams. What do you think Indiana should be spending that federal money on?
Well, let me take a shot at that, Brandon. There are, you know, I started to read that American Rescue Plan document. It is a heavy slog to get through there and to see what money is available to the states and what are the criteria. So I think that Senator Mishler has actually done a pretty good job at trying to take money that we know fits into certain categories and allocate it towards various plans. But I know that there must also be some problems because, for example, they took $100 million and basically gave it to FSSA and said, use this for mental health. And I'm sure that the reason that that is so open is because the feds do not have their guidance done yet. So, you know, we're running this money through the budget, which I believe is totally appropriate. The legislature appropriates money, but we also are doing it kind of blind because we don't know what all the federal programs will allow us to do exactly. So I think he's done a pretty good job.
Echo what she was just mentioning. I would add that restoring the cuts to a lot of the agencies is extremely important. I know there's been a 15% cut in the budget proposal starting from the governor's office for a lot of these agencies. When you look at agencies like DCS, you look at agencies like FSSA and the Department of Health. Now is not the time to cut those agencies that provide vital services. But another recommendation that we will propose is, you know, we have the Teacher Pay Commission study that came out with recommendations, and we have yet to make any solid plan to put forth to raise teacher salaries across the state of Indiana. So using those new dollars or freeing up new dollars by leveraging some of the federal funding will allow our locals to increase teacher pay at a local level.
Eric and then Tom.
Thanks, Sunitha. Hi, Senators. At least 3 of the 4 of you in the committee hearing described the bill as an improvement on the House version. Senator Tallian, I know you voted yes in part because of that. What specifically is better about what the House sent over?
Go ahead.
Well, I think first, the reducing the expansion of the voucher program for us was an extreme concern for many of our caucus members. And that was addressed to a certain degree in the Senate version of the budget. There were several things that we individually as representatives of our districts were looking to get approved. Myself was a study done for the Buffington Harbor corridor in Gary that was included there, and Senator Tallian has several things as well. So we made some progress, and I don't want to overstate the collaboration that took place and the conversations between our caucus and the Republican caucus, but we're still not there yet. I think that's why you see some of our members support it, and you have some that did not support it because of the potential and the opportunity. So I think that sends a message of the opportunities that exist.
Yeah, Eric, and I also think, I agree with everything Eddie just said, but I also think that Senator Mishler made a good attempt to try to actually appropriate some of the federal money and run it through the budget and direct it to specific programs. So I think that was a big improvement because frankly, when the House did their version, they just weren't ready to do that. We just didn't have a handle yet on all that money that was coming in.
Hi, Senators. This is Tom Davies from the AP. With the changes in the voucher program that the Senate Republicans have advanced, do you think that's the best you're going to get? You obviously would prefer no expansion of that. Do you think the House will push to get more of what they had in their expansion? Just sort of where do you think that's going to fall?
Well, just keep in mind, Tom, we received Senator Mishler's budget amendment very briefly, and we had a chance to review it. So we didn't get a chance to look at the runs and the impact overall that their proposal will have on our school corporations, especially within our districts or around the state. So that's why we all made the recommendations through our caucus. So it's still a little bit early right now for us to determine how the Senate Republicans version around the vouchers program will impact it overall. But I believe majority of us are still, we want to make sure our public schools are fully funded, and that's been a priority. I think also some requests that Senator Tallian has made over the years is voucher programs should be a line item in the budget. And I think that's for the transparency's sake of things. So we still have a long way to go around that conversation.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Great, thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.